Hi everybody, my name is Yuki the Geek Mess, and if this is your first time joining me on my channel, I am a channel that primarily covers stuff like Pokemon, video games in general, anime, and that kind of stuff. But I do like more fantasy stuff as well, such as Harry Potter. And this is why I'm covering this video today, mostly because the new HBO series is coming out. If you guys are expecting a lot of Harry Potter stuff, I'd say probably wait closer to the production. But if you guys just want to join me for general geek related topics, you guys can hit that subscribe down in the button below. Sorry to bog you down with this. Let's get on to the video. Voldemort's an idiot. Simply put, Horcruxes are a horrible idea. Despite the idea that they could be brilliant, Voldemort wields them dumbly. Now, we need to talk about why Tom Riddle, aka Voldemort, is the most vain person in the world, and why his choices for Horcruxes were some of the worst decisions. But before we get to that, what is a Horcrux? A Horcrux is an item that has a percentage of somebody's soul, usually caused by that person performing a murder while in possession of the item. For example, Avada Kedavra, or having one of your Horcruxes can do a murder is another way to split the soul. Now, it's not easy to perform a Horcrux creation, or every single Death Eater would probably have hundreds of Horcruxes unknowingly. That's not the case. If that's true, even Voldemort would have thousands of Horcruxes. But that's not the case. Now, Tom Riddle, aka Voldemort, is very dumb. Now, a Horcrux can be anything, both normal and living. And it's not hard to see that Tom Riddle went with some of the most, and I quote, rare and not... Now, let's talk about his most common sense and not vain version of a Horcrux, which would actually be his original diary that he had during his school years. That is a perfect Horcrux. It is something that is so common that anybody would have. Why would someone assume that a magical book would be the most dangerous thing in the world containing a evil wizard's soul? You wouldn't. And then on the same case, as you keep going, more and more and more, the vanity of the different Horcruxes keep going. You have the ring of Salazar the Slytherin. You have the cup of Helga Hufflepuff. You have the diadem of Ravenclaw. Or whatever Ravenclaw's name is. You have vain items. Now, you do have another item, the locket that his mother wore. This isn't too vain, but it's still something that, if you know what it's the Voldemort's family line, who is also related to Slytherin, you know it's an important object. And of course, if these items are destroyed, that fraction of your soul is gone forever. It's not a way that your soul is reformed. When the Tom Riddle's diary is stabbed by the basilisk's tooth, it is not the percentage of that soul doesn't go back to Lord Voldemort. That part of his soul is permanently gone. 50% of your soul is gone right there. And also we need to keep in mind, each time you make a new Horcrux, it doesn't balance out your soul fragments between all the Horcruxes. The diary, the very first Horcrux, has 50% of Voldemort's soul. And each time that he creates a brand new Horcrux, the percentage of his soul gets lesser and lesser throughout the story. And actually, when Harry actually gets a percentage of Voldemort's soul, it's only roughly 3% of his overall soul that's left by this point. Despite how much, strangeness, Voldemort really has from the whole connection. Harry gets all this Posselton connecting directly to the Dark Lord and all kinds of stuff. And he's only got 3% of Voldemort's overall soul. But it also explains why Harry could not, basically survived all his years of Hogwarts. And he's basically invulnerable, because if he does die, that section of Voldemort dies as well. But the best thing is, Voldemort never realizes that Harry was part of his Horcruxes. He had no idea. And honestly, the fact that in the 4th year of Hogwarts, the fact that in the Goblet of Fire, Harry almost died by Voldemort would have meant he would have killed one of his own Horcruxes. And the thing is, it's interesting to think that he is so vain that he had no idea that so many of his Horcruxes were destroyed. And the thing is, there's also a reality where the Tom Riddle in the diary could have revived and got a body back in the Chamber of Secrets. And then in the Goblet of Fire, at the same time, Voldemort could have came back as well. So there'd be 2 Voldemorts around at the same time. Now, the one in the graveyard obviously would be a stronger and more experienced wizard, but the Tom Riddle from the diary is a more whole human. And even the Tom Riddle from the diary could have made more Horcruxes, even making Voldemort's soul harder to destroy. See, and this is the interesting thing. It's just Voldemort ripped his soul apart so much that, yeah, he was nearly impossible to kill, but at the same time, he put his items in such vain items. If he didn't do this, he would have survived. You know, I hate to put this comparison, but he could have just threw part of his soul in a tin can. He would have been safer because, well, why are you going to stab a tin can with a basilisk fang? You know, why are you going to use the sword of Gryffindor to stab a pebble on the road? It's just the fact that Voldemort was so vain in the creation of all these Horcruxes that he comes across as foolish. And Tom Riddle always comes across as foolish when in some of his things. You know, he wants to do X, Y, Z, but every time it fails. Goblet of Fire is a great reason. The entire year, he has Barty Crouch Jr. at Hogwarts. And it would have been so easy to just, I don't know, have Mad Eye Moody, a.k.a. Barty Crouch Jr. in disguise, literally make anything into a Portkey and just, boom, take Harry out of the school. This whole Triwizard tournament, didn't have to do that. Just, boom, teleport Harry right to the graveyard, then and there. Revived at the beginning of the 4th year versus the end of the 4th year. You see, like, Tom Riddle's plans are always elaborate and, you know, and it's interesting to think that how many times that Lord Voldemort fails. And, you know, if you think about it at the same time, his followers are equally as dumb. You know, the 2nd year of school, you know, you have Severus puts the diary, not even knowing what it was, into Ginny Weasley's, pot there at the Diagon Alley. And, yeah, you have not knowing that, yeah, hey, Lord Voldemort gave you to protect that, not to, just get it to the school to cause all these issues. It's silliness. It really is. My overall opinion is that Voldemort is a dummy. And honestly, I think that's the strongest way to put it. And of course, I don't think the HBO series really can't do anything to fix this, what I call, not a plot hole, but just showing how Voldemort is stupid. They're going to have more time to flesh out the books, but the books themselves don't make Voldemort look very smart. It really doesn't, and that's a bad fact, is Voldemort looks very dumb throughout all the books and the movies. He puts himself on the back of a very frail man's, body and everything. He throughout the entire series, every time he comes back, he does something stupid. And of course, the dumbest thing he does is just, even as a Horcrux, he doesn't protect the diary that's going to, if it gets stabbed, he dies. It's silliness. It really is. And of course, maybe that was what Dumbledore, and maybe that's why Dumbledore was always such a great threat to Tom Riddle. Because Dumbledore actually was intelligent, while Tom Riddle was more a vain man. He might have been a powerful wizard, but he was a very foolish and vain individual. And that's the thing is, I find it very interesting that Horcruxes are such a great, well, great, but terrible concept. But Voldemort himself is a really dumb wizard overall. And that's the thing is, I don't think the HBO series will be able to help the idea of Voldemort being smarter because, honestly, that's messing with the books, and I don't think people want them to mess with the books more than they might already mess with the books. And that's the thing is, and even the idea that, like, you know, Nagini, which is a woman in a snake who's been changed into a snake because of her heritage and everything, or what she is, you know, I even think that's silly that, like, he made a living thing intentionally a Horcrux. Things die. That's just a reality. Pets, animals, they die. They might be magical animals, but they have a timeline. They're going tick, 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 tick. You know, you can't stop a living thing from dying. And of course, you know, you got Horcruxes that are, you know, the diary's made out of paper. Something's eventually going to eat that diary away. You know, moss and all that crap. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking this. But my own personal opinion is Tom Riddle's an idiot. So guys, what do you think about the HBO series coming up? Do you think it's going to be exciting? Do you think it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do with Harry Potter and all these movies? Are they actually going to stretch them out? And also, fun debate down below. Do you call it the Sorcerer's Stone or the Philosopher's Stone? You let me know in the comment section down below, guys. Geek out.